I heard senior family historian, and I'm like, what do you do? I mean, I think I get it. I think because of 10 years, 12 years of, doing this work, I know that, but I don't think the people listening would want to understand that. So what is it that a family historian does?
Well, how to break it down. So, the first thing I do with any family is I start to build out a family tree, right? And so I delve into all sorts of genealogical databases. There's so much that you can find online these days. It's pretty phenomenal. And so I start to fill out the family tree. But a family tree is really just data, right? So you can look at it, and I can make some trees go back like 14 generations. They can go way back. But even a tree that substantial, you look at it and you're like, wow. And that's it, So it's really important to start thinking about the stories behind the people on those trees. What did they go through? How did they face change and challenge and triumph? How and why did they move over time? How did careers change? How did education change? So you begin to get this picture of how the family got to where it is today. So that's one mode of exploring the family history. It's more traditional. It's going through the historical documents, finding them in all different places. A ton of oral history as well. And the oral history is so important for both the family and the business. For the business, you get to interview so often the original generation of the business creators, and you get that original institutional memory that helps to really document the culture of the business, how it began, and things like that. And for the families, you not only get the wealth creation story from, a spouse, but you get to talk to the spouse who wasn't in the business. Usually that's the wife. It still happens to be a gender split, right? It's not always true, but you really get a sense of what was going on behind the scenes, how the family was living through this experience of the business developing and all the dynamics that come out of that. And you get, the stories from both sides, because the kids and future generations, they're not just coming from the wealth creators side, right? It's everything. So those are a couple of ways that I go about it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
The other thing that I just was so thrilled about when I found out about getting to work with Karen is she also, along with her research, she created these amazing curated cards of how to get people talking about their values from a standpoint of history. And they're like beautiful cards, and the pictures on them are all significant and have different meaning, and people get a chance to choose what speaks to them without knowing the history behind it. And then when they find out, it's like this whole other thing opens up for them. And it's been this really wonderful way to start to bridge conversations that maybe were never had in the family, and allows like kids to safely ask questions of maybe the matriarch and patriarch, that there's always been a sense of, oh no, you can't go there. And but with the cards, there's like a way to be able to broach it and find out what their biggest failure was, or find out like what their biggest aspiration was. Like, it's really a wonderful tool that and resource that I was really inspired by when I got to use it. And I also share that I got to experience Karen's work personally, because when COVID hit, I found out from my aunt that I wouldn't exist if the 1919 Spanish flu epidemic hadn't happened. And she told me the story, and I wrote it up. It's on LinkedIn, and I sent it to Karen, and I was like, what do you think? Is there any way to find out some data about my family? And she found out all of this amazing stuff that we didn't know. And then it sparked this great conversation between my dad and his sister, and they're both in their 80s. And it was, I've grown up with these people my whole life, and I've never heard these conversations before. And I never knew that my grandmother, went to Canada, and then her brothers came from Cuba, like all kinds of things. And it's an amazing way to open up conversations. And obviously I'm all about that from this historical perspective. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, and you know, there's a thing about it too, where I think one of the most common quotes you'll hear from anybody when they talk about history is like, "Oh, I always hated history. Had to memorize all those facts and dates," and that is the worst way, right, to
Right.
learn history. Like high school history is awful the way we have to read those textbooks. But in fact, people love history. And so often it's actually the rising gen who is really pushing to want to learn more about their parents and then their grandparents. And if they haven't raised the question, when I pull up stories from the 19th century or earlier that were shocking in their day, and the younger kids, they're like, what? Our family's not boring? You know, I mean, that's one thing, but so often I've seen families where, you know, you see generation after generation clearly dealing with, you know, mental health issues or substance abuse and alcoholism. And it's so much easier for these families to talk about those who have passed away, and they're not threatened by those people. They have empathy for those people. They want to know more. They get that while people make choices, they are also products of their circumstances, small and large. And so they really do begin to see how they can talk about issues that they know are going on in their family today. But they get to start from kind of a fun yet poignant place. So Emily's great at sort of bridging the past to the future, because sometimes I get stuck in the past.
And also, Michael, something else if I may, that I was just thinking about, because this is so timely. You know, we're in a really poignant part, like this is a huge historical moment we're living through right now. And one of the things that I've gotten to experience in working with Karen in family meetings is she very delicately and brilliantly will bring up pain points from history as well. Many families find out that they may have been slave owners in the past.
Yeah.
Or maybe there was massive deforestation that happened as a really successful lumber company or oil company, and like huge devastation to the environment. And the rising gen, they don't want to shy away from these conversations. They want to bring it forward, and they want to look at, wow, what contributed to the wealth in the family, and then how can we make reparations? How can we use our philanthropic means to really make things right, and to take these pain points and shift it? And that's been an extraordinary opening of conversation, and to notice that it's like we can't change what happened in the past, but boy, can we influence the future.
Exactly.
And that's been profound for me to see what can happen. I don't know if you've seen that, Michael, but
absolutely. And there's a couple of things that have popped into my head as you're talking. Is one, that there was I don't know if it was in a psychology magazine but it was about the development of a person when they know their history is different from one that doesn't know it, because all those unanswered questions about where did I come from and who am I, you know, they're constantly spending energy and time thinking about those things rather than knowing where I came from, and then, you know, whether it was good or bad in the history, and there's always both. But I can work on, you know, making reparations, or I can work on not being that family any longer. And then all the good things, you know, we are who we are because of, you know, somebody else endured through mistakes. And, you know, what do they say? We learn from history. We hope not to repeat the same mistakes, and we want to grow and build and be better from those things. But without the stories, we don't